Welcome to the Ohio Arts Council's Rife Gallery programming series for the current show, Sequence, curated by Christine DePiro Abbott. Today, we are thrilled to present the artist Bobby Rosenstock. All right, Bobby, to you.
Thanks so much, Kat, for having me. And thanks to the Ohio Arts Council and the Rife Gallery, and Christine for curating the fantastic exhibit Sequence currently on view at the gallery, that I was honored to be asked to be a part of alongside a bunch of incredible printmakers from around the state of Ohio. Um, so Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I started my business, Just a Jar Design Press, which is located here in Marietta, Ohio. I'll give a little bit of a background story, and then I'm going to try to talk a little bit about the business side of things and what it's been like to run an art business. Just a Jar Design Press is a letterpress and design studio located in Marietta, Ohio. It's myself and my wife, Sarah, that run the studio. She teaches full-time at Marietta College and kind of handles more the graphic design side of the business, while I am kind of there every day and making posters and printing stuff. And we have a small retail shop in the front. Um, so I come from the great state of New Jersey, and Sarah is from Washington State, Skagit Valley area. And we met in 2000 at Alfred University. We met the first day of school and have been together ever since. So I got a degree in painting, a BA FA from Alfred, and Sarah got her BFA in graphic design. My junior year, I studied abroad at the University of Tasmania in Hobart, Tasmania, where I signed up for my first printmaking class, which happened to be just an open studio. There was no instruction. We just had access to the printmaking studio. And I saw a woodcut hanging on the wall and loved how it looked, loved the texture and the mark making and everything about it. So I said, I want to try making one of those. So I found a piece of pine board, bought a single woodcut U-gouge and gave it a try. And this was my first woodcut that I made. And people seemed to really react and respond to it, like more so than any of my people had ever reacted to my paintings. And I also just loved the process of getting to print these on an old hand iron press, and just the craft and different levels of work that went into making a print beyond just kind of drawing or painting. I just freehanded this without a sketch. I just started carving on the block. I also loved being able to make a bunch of prints and trade them with friends. And I just liked the idea, like everything about printmaking just initially just like spoke to me, and I was totally hooked. Um, After college, Sarah and I moved out to Portland, Oregon, and I got a job working in we were out there for 3 years from 2004 to 2007, and I worked in a number of commercial print shops, running large format UV screen printing presses, doing some offset printing. I worked in a t-shirt shop for a bit, and I really just loved learning how to operate these big industrial printing presses. It was super fun. I just enjoyed mixing ink and matching colors and learning how the machines worked. But at the same side, I just like hated the waste that came out of the printing industry. One of my shops, we just printed on a lot of foam core and plastics. And they were just for like sales and events. We did a lot of work for Nike, and I just hated that I was making all this stuff that just, would be up for a month or two and then wind up in the landfill. And then at the same time, I joined a printmaking cooperative called Flight 64, and was advancing my printmaking skills, getting to work alongside other printmakers in this small studio behind a pizza shop on Alberta Street in Portland, and making woodcuts and trying to sell my work on the street or in galleries or in coffee shops. And then at the same time, the fine art world wasn't really clicking for me either. I didn't like the idea of like having to print on like Reeves BFK and then like professionally frame my art and then, show it in a gallery to have the gallery take, 50%. And it just I didn't feel comfortable in the fine art world also. So I was searching for something in between the commercial and fine art worlds, and I didn't really know what that was. And at this point, Sarah and I decided we wanted to go back to grad school. I had fallen in love with printmaking kind of late in my college career, so never really got a good education in it. And Sarah wanted to teach at the college level. So we both happened to get into schools in Philadelphia. She went to Tyler School of Art, where she studied graphic design, and I went to the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, their printmaking and book arts program. At the same time, I was really into like sewing and making books. And they also had a small commercial shop that had a one color offset press. And I thought I was going to use the offset press to make art and make books. That was maybe some, like small commercial type of work. But then I discovered their letterpress studio, and I had no idea what letterpress printing was at the time. But then I saw this studio, and it was these small commercial presses that you could print woodcuts on. And I was like, oh, bingo, this is exactly what I have been looking for. And just spent all my time at grad school making work on a Vandercook printing press. Also at that time, a friend of mine said, you need to go down to Knoxville, Tennessee and work at Yeehaw Industries. Like you will love this place. This is what you're looking for. And so I called them up and spent the summer down there interning, apprenticing in their shop. And they were right. It was exactly the type of stuff I was interested in. Kevin and Julie, who owned Yeehaw, Kevin came out of Hat Show Print and opened up his own shop in Knoxville. Yeehaw is no longer there, but Kevin and Julie both are still making art under other press names. But they were making gig posters and making art prints, and it was this folk artwork. They were printing on chipboard and like cheap paper and giving prints away and selling stuff, and just the energy and the art and the kind of community that they created down there out of their print shop, just like everything. I was like, I want to do this. But at the same time, I was like, they had a bunch of employees and it was a pretty big operation. And I knew I wasn't interested in like running something at that scale, but I wanted my own art to kind of be like what they were doing. So we were in Philadelphia, and Sarah got offered a 10-year track graphic design teaching position at Marietta College, a small town in Southeast Ohio that sits along the confluence of the Ohio and Muskingum rivers. Neither of us ever thought we would wind up, living in a small town in Southern Ohio, but I think, it was a good job opportunity. And so we were open to it. And we got down there and found out the cost of living was really low. And we were able to get a house, which was super nice after being in a bunch of cities where we had these tiny apartments that had this leaky one-car garage. And shortly after I was able to, I found an old Vandercook press in Indiana and put it in my garage and just started making things. So early on, I was, getting started and just taking any work I could get. So I was making business cards and wedding invitations and book plates and stationery and bags for the local bakery and all sorts of stuff like this. And then on the side, I was just working all sorts of odd jobs on the side, helping out friends that were contractors or teaching bookbinding workshops in different places around Ohio, just trying to get by like artists tend to do. Um, this was definitely a lot of letterpress shops, you know, their bread and butter is wedding invitations and business cards and stationery lines. That's I didn't mind doing that stuff, but it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. Um, what I wanted to be doing was making posters and making woodcuts. I didn't really think of myself as like a graphic designer. I thought of myself as like a painter that make woodcut posters. So I didn't know how to start making posters. So there was this place, this music venue in Nelsonville, Ohio, just outside of Athens called Stewart's Opera House, this beautiful historic opera house. And the bands that they were having come through were all the bands that I like to listen to. So I just drove out there one day and went into their office and said, "Hey, can I make you guys some posters?" Or I was like, "Can you pay me money so I can make you posters?" And they were like, "Well, we love the idea of like woodcut letterpress posters." They were this historic theater, and in the back of the theater, there was a bunch of vintage like posters we pasted to the walls and stuff. But they didn't think that their clientele were the type of folks that would buy posters as merch at shows, and they weren't sure if they can make it work. So I said, "Well, can I make you a poster for free for your?" They had a fundraiser show coming up, and so I made a poster for them for free. I also part of the deal was like I printed an artist edition of prints that I could sell after the fact on my own, but I gave them 100 posters to sell for the Dirty Dozen Brass Band, and it went really well. The band loved them. They sold a ton of posters. So they, came back to me and were like, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's make some posters." So the first poster I was paid to do was for Dr. John, which was a pretty sweet gig. And then they also put on the Nelsonville Music Festival every year. And so they started hiring me to make posters for that festival. And so at this point, I was trying to figure out how to make posters work as like a business plan because it takes a lot of time to do woodcuts. And was like, how can I make this like work in which the venue can afford to pay me and they can make money off of it, but it's worth my time as well. At the time there was a online forum called geekposters.com where all the poster people working as poster artists would kind of chat about work and the business side of things. And so I'd go on there, but everyone on there was screen printers. I was the only block printer. But I learned the basic formula that all poster artists use was basically you get paid per poster, like a wholesale cost. And early on, I was, charging maybe $5 or $6 a poster with a minimum run of 100 posters that they would pay me, the venue or the artist or the management team would pay me to make them a poster for an event. And then they would be selling them at the show for $20 to $40. And then part of the deal is I would also get to print an artist edition of posters, usually 30 to 50 posters that after the show ended, I could sell on online or at art fairs. And you really would kind of make your money back, like selling the posters after the fact. My price has $5 to $6. A poster was not enough early on, but I was just getting started and I was trying to get gigs. And so, the longer you do it, then you kind of raise your prices um, to a more manageable level. But yeah, have been making posters for the Nelsonville Music Festival and the Hocking Hills Music Festival that they put on for years now. And it's always, really fun to like just explore the subject matter over and over again and watch as my kind of craft develops, uh, and just my illustration style and use of text has kind of evolved over the years. Um, and shortly after making posters for Stewart's, I started getting other musicians reaching out. I got asked to do Willie Nelson's New Year's Eve poster in Austin, and Soundgarden reached out to me about doing posters. Um, John Prine and Mountain Stage. And one of the great things about doing gig posters is like it always gets a lot of attention. So, when you have Willie Nelson or Soundgarden sharing your poster on their social media site, like a ton of people are seeing your art and it's just getting out there and they're being shown at the shows. So the bigger it snowballs real quick. Once you get one or two bigger clients, you get a bunch of other people starting to reach out. um, my biggest client probably right now is going to do posters for Billy Strings. His fan base has is really into posters, and those are some pretty large runs that I do for him, and going to do a poster for Bob Weir Camp and the Wood Brothers. And yeah, so these are all full color woodcuts. I do a combination of reductive and multi-block prints. Everything's it starts as a pencil drawing. I figure out the color separations and then carve each block and print each block one at a time. I usually spend at least like 40, it usually takes about 40 hours to carve and print a run of like 100, 200 posters. I do work pretty quickly though, and I'm not super precious with my work. I like my work to have a little spontaneity to it. It could be a little bit of rough around the edges. Like I consider myself a folk artist. I like I try to get registration and things to get it as tight as possible, but I'm not really seeking perfection in my work. I like art that shows the artist's hand. So around 2016, moved out of the garage and found a space in downtown Marietta. Marietta has a historic front street. It's the first settlement in Ohio. It's the first settlement actually outside of the original colonies. So there's a lot of history in Marietta, and it's a big tourist town. And the 2 block front street has some beautiful storefronts, and this space presented itself to them. And so I moved in to this space to be my studio space. But I was down here, and since I was down here, I figured I might as well open up a small retail shop up front, where I could sell things while I'm down here. Originally, I was just open the door from time to time, and now I have set hours in which my shop is open Fridays and Saturdays. It's an old jewelry store, so it says jewelry and diamonds down there, and J. Whitlig and Sons and cut glass up top. Some more just photos around the shop. And as the shop kind of developed, I started carrying more things. People would come in and shop, and not everyone wants a poster. So I started making t-shirts and bandanas, and I have a stationery section with all sorts of cool pens I carry. Um, So my presses, I print on two presses. I have an old style Chandler and Price press, which is the platen press to the right there. That was actually built in the 1880s. It's powered with a foot treadle, and all my greeting cards are hand printed on that. It's a really cool, it's a really cool machine, old machine to run, and uh, yeah, it's amazing how these old pieces, old machinery was meant to last a long time. And then I print all my posters on my Vandercook SP20, which is a flatbed proofing press, one color at a time. Oh, yep, some more photos of my presses. Um, all my blocks are hand carved. I carve in plywood, mostly because one, it's affordable, and two, it's flat. The presses are really sensitive to like whatever substrate you're using has to be totally flat to be inked up and printed consistently. And plywood happens to be flat. I carve using a cherry veneer plywood that I special order from Home Depot on their website. It's a cherry veneer top layer with poplar underlayers. Um, I've also built up a collection of type over the years, movable type, metal and wood movable type. A big part of letterpress printing is printing with type. And I got into letterpress printing for woodcuts, but then if you're making posters, you got to work with type. And I had never really worked with text in my images before. I never took any graphic design classes. I didn't know much about typography. Um, but luckily I was married to a graphic designer that taught typography at the college level. So early on when I was making posters, Sarah would be pretty involved with helping me um, figure out how to do type treatments, whether I was hand carving it or setting type, and just helping me with like the composition and overall kind of art directing a lot of the projects. Um, Over the years of having her tell me that looks bad or fix that kerning or fix that leading. I've kind of learned a lot about I've kind of built the bridge as I crossed it as far as learning typography. But now I think I'm pretty decent working with text and image. I've been doing it for 15 years now. But still I can't I hate designing on the computer. I get overwhelmed by the choices. I like to be able to touch the type. I like the limitations of typesetting and letterpress printing in general. If there's a section of my poster in which I need to fit a band's name, there's usually only two or three options from like the fonts that I own that would fit in that space. So it's like work with what you got. Sometimes I think having some limitations is really helpful for art making. Um, and so beyond just making posters and making work on paper, we were having people reach out to us to do other sorts of like branding for their businesses or companies. And one of those folks is Lil Fish Brewing Company, which is a brewery in Athens and now Ohio, with a location in Dayton, Ohio as well. Um, and they came to us like a year before they opened their brewery. And well, they hired Sarah to design their logo for them. And then they wanted woodcut labels for their beers. Um, and at first I wasn't sure how to go about doing that because it seemed like I can't really replicate the woodcut style without doing a woodcut. I can't replicate it digitally or with pen and paper. Um, so it seemed like a lot of work to carve and print one print that you would just be scanning into a computer to then print out on a label. And I'd have to charge a bunch, and I didn't know if like we could make it work. But I really wanted to do the job. So what I pitched to them was making posters for their beers. So every label that we did started as a poster, and the posters included like information about the beer and the alcohol percentage and little stories, and they were kind of treated as like these old advertisement kind of style posters. And so they hired me to do a label, and I was able to charge them more for that label. And then they also got 100 prints that they could sell at their brewery. And then Sarah would take the print and scan it in and like reformat and move things around and tweak some things digitally to create a label that fit the requirements of whatever kind of alcohol labels needed to fit. And so that was just like one of these things that we kind of figured out how to make it work and be beneficial to like ourselves as like the artists, me and Sarah, and then the brewery as well had got these posters and these kind of cool, unique labels. And we've done like 30 labels for them, I think, at least now over the years. Yeah, and so soon after that, we were getting other people reaching out about labels. I work with some different wineries around the country, and we kind of did the same thing in which we'd make posters that they could get to either give away to clients or sell. Ramblin' House Sodas in Columbus reached out to us about doing some branding for them, and it started with just like these black and white woodcuts, and they turned into their box truck graphics and tap handles and bottle labels. Just recently this year, I got to design the cover for Ohio Magazine's January, February issue. And same thing, I made a bunch of posters. It started as a poster. I made a bunch of posters that they gave away to their employees and did giveaways to readers. And then it was cool to see the print on the cover of the magazine. Another one of my bigger clients is I do a poster every year for Jack Daniel's, their World Barbecue Championship. So they reached out to me initially in like 2012 when I was still printing in my garage, and I just got a call out of the blue from that ad agency down in Nashville that represented them. And they were looking for someone to do woodcut posters, and I think just kind of Googled woodcut posters and found me. And they seemed to like my work and be interested in working with me on the poster. And I was, super interested in working with them, but they seemed to be hesitant about hiring a guy from Southern Ohio that they didn't know that was making posters in his garage for such a big, kind of such a high profile job. So there was a bit of back and forth, but ultimately the job kind of fell through. But shortly later that year, I was back in New Jersey visiting family, and I went out for a drink in the city with a friend of mine. She was like a businesswoman in New York, and I was telling her about this project that kind of fell through, and I was a little bummed about it. And she was like, "You're an idiot. You have your foot in the door. That is like the hardest part, like making that connection. And they clearly like your work and want to work with you. You just need to like close the deal." And so she was speaking like a businesswoman, and I was just like, "I don't know. I just make things. I don't want to be like that." And she said, just do it. Just be professional, sell yourself, and I bet you'll get it. And so I kind of followed her advice and for the next year's barbecue event, I reached back out to them and kind of laid out my whole schedule and plan and contract and try to treat it really, just be very professional about it and respond to all their emails in a timely manner and just, and so I think they decided to hire me for this job, and I could tell they were a little nervous about it, because it was a pretty big job. It's making over the run was over 1,000 hand printed posters. Um, but they turned out great. I think they liked them. All the attendees liked them. And now I've been making posters for them for about 10 years, I think. I've done like 30 posters. This series here from 2018 actually won at the National Addy Awards. It won the best poster campaign in the country for 2018, which was pretty cool. This is this year's poster. And then the other thing of this is I'm working with an ad agency on this. So it is a collaborative project. They come up with the concept every year. It's like a different theme, and we do a pig, cow, and chicken. And every year is a different theme that the ad agency kind of pitches, and they come up with the sayings. And then they pitch me what they want the illustrations to look like. They give me, yeah, I think one year they were like, "Oh, make the cow look like Bobby Kennedy or something." And there was one where it was like, "Oh, it should look like John Travolta." So they give me all sorts of like stuff that they want it to look like, and there's tons of back and forth. There's a lot of people involved with the project. They do a lot of the bottom half, like typography. They handle a lot of that, but I do the illustrations, the woodcuts, and the printing. It also it was a total new way of working, but I kind of learned to like embrace it. Sometimes there's a lot of things you can learn from working in a different way. I don't tend to work with like spot colors like this, but they just wanted like 2 or 3 colors tops. They wanted everything to be very graphic. My woodcuts were always like a little bit more like rough and painterly and sketchy and lots of colors. And so I had to kind of adjust my illustration style for them. Which at first I kind of pushed back upon, but once I started to do it, I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. And some of the things I wound up doing in these poster series, I would later kind of use some of those things I learned in my own personal work and woodcuts. So besides all the commercial work, I'm still like an artist at heart, and I just want to make artwork sometimes. So I always try to save like a little bit of time. My schedule, I have enough repeat clients, and I know when things are going to land, that I have certain times of the year where I have a little bit of downtime, and I try to save room for personal projects. 2 to 4 art prints every year. And these are also pieces that I can make money off of. I sell them in my store and online, and when I do art fairs, but they're more of just pieces that kind of sometimes I just want to make work for the sake of making work and not have to worry about a client like give me feedback on what I'm making, because that could get exhausting sometimes. But yeah, so trying to find that balance is a constant. You're constantly tweaking it every year. I'm like, I need to leave more time. I'm getting tired of doing client work, or I need to make a little more money this year. I need to pick up some bigger jobs. So you're constantly kind of tweaking things, trying to find the sweet spot. And sometimes pieces like this is a piece I made during COVID after reading like a T.S. Eliot poem, and the line, "The still point of the turning world," just kind of hit home as like this reminder to like pause and just appreciate things, and especially when everything was so crazy going on in the world. And I made this print as just like an art piece of my family, and I didn't I just made it because I wanted to make it. And it was like, the kids will like having a copy of this print. But then I shared it online and like it sold out like super quick. So I didn't think anyone would want to buy this, but then it turned sometimes when you make work that's like honest, pe people see that in the work and then it resonates with folks. Um, my other creative outlet has been playing music. So I play banjo in a band called Oyo. We're just a bunch of local working dads that kind of get together once a week to hang out and play music. We would play in my shop. I was the least skilled musician of all these guys. I never really played music besides just owning a banjo and guitar that I like to mess around with for fun. Um, but playing, I got better from playing with a bunch of musicians that were better than me, and soon we started getting booked for gigs, and now we have 2 records out of original music that we've put out, and we've got to play some really great shows. And then I get to make merch for my own band, and that's pretty fun. We hand printed our record. We got some vinyl records printed. The first one with the kind of skeleton merman, we did a run of like 1,000 records. And that was a 7-color print, so 1,000 7-color prints, and then we assembled them by hand. So we busted out the hot glue guns and bone folders, and just hung around for like half a day, just like folding stuff. It felt like I was back at book art school, and it was super fun getting to do that, and have hand printed records. Um, Also, being part of my community here in Marietta has been really important to me. It's an awesome small town. Like I said, I never thought we'd wind up in Southeast Ohio. We didn't really think we'd stick around that long for Sarah's job, but we just kind of totally fell in love with the town, the history, the beautiful architecture. It's a great place to raise kids. I love living along a river. And so it's been important to me to like make work for the community. So I always save time the same way I save time for some personal fine art prints. I save time to make prints for community events, whether that's like local small businesses, like the local family orchard, or nonprofits that I care about, the local roller derby team or the local baseball team. So I always do a handful of posters like this every year. These jobs tend to not really pay as much or at all. Sometimes I just do them pro bono, but it's really fun getting to do posters that we hang up around the community, um, and kind of play that role of like local print shop the same way, like old print shops. Every community had their local print shop back in the day, and I like being able to play that role, and it's fun and rewarding, getting to work with people from my community. When we did those roller derby team posters, I had the roller derby team like came into the shop and they printed all the posters while wearing roller skates, printing on the Vandercook, which was super fun, having them all dressed up in their uniforms. And so I also do posters for Marietta College every year. Every year I do a different matriculation poster. So every incoming freshman gets a poster that I make. Also, for the past 5 years, I joined the board of Marietta Main Street, which is our downtown uh, kind of organization, and I am the chair of the public art committee in town. And we've done a bunch of public art projects all around downtown. This is a mural we did in this tunnel along the bike path along the river, in which myself and 3 other local artists created a scene of local flora and fauna that could be found in the river. And then we had a bunch of volunteers that helped us paint it all. And we got a grant from the Ohio Arts Council that helped make this happen, which we really appreciate. And so getting to work in this way is super fun, like completely different than, sitting on a press and carving wood, getting back to my painting roots, and getting to work collaboratively with other artists. Um, Having work in such a public setting, I've just, public art is kind of like a new thing for me, and I'm just totally hooked and in love with like public art. I love going to look at public art when I'm in other cities. I love just seeing the impact it could have on a community or a neighborhood. And it's just become this kind of side project that's been really important. And just also, it's also created this like amazing little art community here in Marietta, which it's like we started this committee that has a bunch of local artists on it, and all of these incredible artists that like I didn't know were here, that maybe lived outside of town or didn't have social media. But there's all these amazing artists living here in Marietta. And so we get together and make things and put them around downtown, and it's really awesome. And the community loves it. And it's really created this amazing kind of atmosphere down here. We've had a number of like little galleries and art shops open downtown. So now there's a handful. When I was first moved downtown, half of the storefronts were empty, and now they're all full, and we have a thriving downtown. Um, this project we did in this parking garage where we got 14 artists together and supplied the paint, and everyone had 24 hours to just make a giant mural together with no preconceived plans. And we just painted for a day, and it was like everyone was just smiling the entire time, and it was such good energy, and it turned out so cool. And so it's been really fun getting to work on projects like this. Um, I get asked a lot about teaching workshops, and I made a decision early on not to teach like formal workshops. Like there's a lot of ways you can make money doing letterpress printing, like business cards and wedding invitations and posters and workshops. And like early on, I was trying to do a little bit of everything. And now I have cut out a lot of things. So I don't do workshops. I don't do wedding invitations. Um, but I still host groups really very frequently. This past week, I had the entire second grade of the local elementary school came to the shop, and everyone printed posters. So whenever I have a group come, I teach them about the history of printing, about letterpress printing, share some of my work, and I always put something on the press that we could print together. And kids just love, I just react amazingly to letterpress printing. And it's like they love the tactile nature of it. The machines are simple. They could see how it works. They're allowed to handle create something right on the fly. And it's just everything's right there in front of them. So, I host probably at least a group a month, ranging from Boy Scout troops to college classes to homeschool groups to retirement homes to woodworking clubs and everything in between. And that's always, super fun. And it's just about also just sharing some of the knowledge I've learned. And also just like introducing kids to like showing them that you can make a living as an artist, or you can make a living doing something that you care about and are passionate about. That's something I didn't know about when I was young. So I like the opportunity to be able to, share that with kids, and hopefully it's something that they remember. And also my kids have grown up in the print shop. They are now 8 and 11, but they have been printing on the Vandercook at least since they could reach the handle. And they love coming to the shop to make lemonade stands, sign posters, or whatever posters they want. They have t-shirt line that they sell in the shop. Um, And yeah, it's a family affair, but that's everything. Thank you everyone for the patience and listening to me blab on about myself for a while. I
Oh,
am
great.
happy. I'm happy if anybody that's watching this has any questions or about anything. This is my website, my phone number, my email, my social media, or my shop down in Marietta. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions. And thanks again.
So, Bobby, I have some questions.
Yeah.
So, um, this is kind of operational, but I think it's important. How do you maintain or clean the presses?
Oh, I clean the presses with well, the ink gets cleaned off with just I use mineral spirits. And then you just kind of have to oil them regularly. There are things that kind of the rubber rollers need to be replaced about like every 5 years. Um, there are some folk that, like any weird, like niche hobby, there's like an online community of people that you can tap into if you're having issues with presses. I'm not one of those. There's some people that in the letterpress printing world that are just really mechanical and great at fixing things and making their own parts of something. I'm not one of those people. I'm also not the cleanest printer ever. There's some shops I go into that like you could, eat your dinner off their press. You would not want to eat your dinner off my printing press. It's I'm a painter turned printmaker, so um, but yeah, there's so stuff I haven't really had any major issues. These old machines were made to last. And when there have been issues, I've been able to kind of tap into some of these online forums and find out where I could get parts made for them. Letterpress printing now is a little more common. A lot of universities have like Vandercook presses in there. So there's kind of some folks that work on them and started getting some parts made. And so yeah.
So, you touched on this a bit, and I think I'm intrigued by the fact that you span so many audiences. So you have a really wide reach for your art. Um, and so you also have the opportunity to bring in communities to fine art through your more personal works because they love your poster work or have been
Mhm.
introduced to you through, perhaps the Nelsonville Music Festival. And they're like, that poster is amazing. Now I need to start collecting Rosenstock prints from
Yeah.
Just a Jar. Uh, so can you talk a little bit about the importance of the breadth of community and audience that you have?
Yeah, I think one of the things that has always attracted me about printmaking from the beginning, which I touched on a little bit, was just like the accessibility of it. Like, I love galleries. I love showing my work in galleries from time to time. Um, but sometimes not everyone's going to walk into a gallery. Sometimes I think there's certain people that would feel like intimidated walking into like, depending on the gallery, some fine art galleries that they like can be intimidating. Um, if someone is not someone that is an art appreciator or something, or you don't know how much art costs, or you don't understand the art. Um, and I love galleries. Especially love the Rife Gallery. But I also just like making art that is like affordable and accessible um and so that's what printmaking, and especially like letterpress printmaking, which being able to use a Vandercook, I'm able to do editions of like 100, 200 prints. So then I could charge I have a bin in my shop where I have $5 prints for sale, and I sell tons of those. And so everyone could have print, kids could come in with $5 and buy art. Um, there's guys that come into my shop that maybe don't understand art, but they think the machines are super cool and they just want to talk about the machines. So there's something about letterpress printing and woodcuts and the process and making posters that just is like accessible to people, that I like. And that I don't think I always knew how to put it into words, but it was like the thing about it that initially attracted me to it and made me just, it just, yeah, it made me kind of love printmaking. Yeah.
That's great. So how do you feel that your experience as a painter has informed or morphed into who you are as a woodblock and letterpress printer?
That's a good question. I totally think it has informed me because it's so uh a- if you look at people like the history of gig posters and like Hat Show Print out of Nashville, that's been, used to make posters for Hank Williams and Johnny Cash and Elvis. And, traditionally, posters like that would be like two colors, spot colors, like red and black, or um, just, and, primary colors, simple. As a painter turned printmaker, I love colors. I just love working with all these colors. So when I started making prints, um, I just wanted to use all the colors. And I was like, well, I don't care that yeah, maybe it's more time effective to do a 2-color print than a 7-color print, but I want to make a 7-color print. So I started making 7-color prints. Um, and I've always been really into mixing inks. I never use ink straight out of the can. Um, and so yeah, people seem to comment a lot about my work that like my use of color seems kind of different than other prints and posters that they've seen. And um, again, not something I really thought about, but I think my background as a painter just made me approach printmaking and design from a different kind of angle that made my work a little bit different than other folks.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So this will be my last question.
Okay.
Tell us about, I think it's important to kind of level set and humanize the artists, right?
Mhm.
And so one way that I like to do that is to ask what a typical day in the studio is for you. Like, how do you enter the studio? How do you get into the frame of mind of creation? Um, and just, kind of give us a little peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, so I try to like once I had kids, I try to turn my work day into like a normal 9 to 5 or 9 to 3, depending on who's picking up the kids. Sarah and I switch off. So either or sometimes 8, sometimes we'll get in at 8 or 9, depending on drop off and pick up. Um, but yeah, I usually go in, I go down to walk down to All Pro Nutrition and get a cup of coffee. Say hi to the old guys sitting at the table drinking coffee that we usually chat for a little bit, then go back into the shop. I listen to lots of books on tape. And so I usually have my day planned out. It's either like a carving. I mean, a lot of what I do is repetitive. It sounds like very sexy making posters and art for a living, but like when I am just, there's just days upon days where I'm just at my press, cranking the press for 8 hours a day. And so you tend to kind of zone out. I listen to a lot of books on tape when I have days like that. So it's typically like a carving or a printing day, depending what I'm working on. Or I also have to ship orders. Fridays I open my door, so it's open to the public. So I try to do something on a day that I wouldn't be distracted. I usually try to do printing days on Fridays when people come in. Um, and then the other side of my work is like just coming up with ideas and drawing and stuff. And that I'll usually do in the evenings during the week. Um, I'll 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 spend the evening kind of sketching in my sketchbook or working on more refined drawings or coming up with a plan for the week. And then there's all the other fun stuff of owning a business like bookkeeping and emails and all that fun stuff. So I try to do a lot of that at home. And when I'm in the shop, I try to be carving or printing. Um, but there's always there's meetings with clients and phone calls and the different boards and organizations I'm on. And there's people, because I'm on Front Street, even if my sign says closed, people will just walk in and start talking to me and or press their face against the window. So there's some distractions, but yeah, it's good. I've kind of figured out my kind of routine of being able to work and make things, but also trying not to work too hard and spend time with my kids while they're young. So.
Sounds like you found a really great balance. You put in a great amount of work on the front end, and now you can reap the benefit of that experience and that hard work. And also sounds like you're a pillar in the community, which, we all need artists as pillars. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I work, working on it. It's a constant balancing act and constantly tweaking, and I'm still, there's things I could be doing that are better, and like all of us can, and you just try your best and be nice to people and try to make work that you care about. And so.
Uh, Perfect place for us to place the ending of this talk. Thank you again, Bobby, so much for the generosity of your time and talent. And thanks everyone for having a look at this artist talk by Bobby Rosenstock as a part of our programming for Sequence. I'd like to give a special thank you to the curator, Christine DePiro Abbott, a big thank you to the participating artists, as well as to the Ohio Arts Council's board, the Ohio legislature, and the governor, who support the OAC, this great space, and of course, Ohio artists. Thanks everyone and have a great day.